Hello everybody, I'm Richard Gon of Back to Live podcast version. So this time, as title shows, I'd like to tell you stories about about whether linguistic wall works or not. So what is linguistic wall? Linguistic wall, which is a question maybe you have come up with, or maybe you have conceived after hearing the title, or after hearing what I'm going to talk about. So what is the linguistic wall? So linguistic wall is a kind of it's a kind of wall, not a real wall. So linguistic wall means like my mother tongue is a my mother tongue is an Asian language, so which means not English. My mother tongue is not English, as you hear it, or as you know, So well, how should I say? So please put in yourself. If you live in a developed if you live in a developed country like France, Germany, or the Netherlands, or some Nordic countries, or Great Britain, any country is fine. So if you live in a European developed country, it's easier for you to imagine. And if you live in the United States of America, or Canada, anyway, maybe if you're Canadian, you can easily imagine. So please imagine that. So putting yourself in the shoes of somebody in developing country. So maybe if you live in a not a developed country, but developing country. If you live in a developing country, so maybe you want to immigrate into a developed country for better life and better future. Anyway, so if you can freely choose which country to immigrate, but you have to study the local language you are going to immigrate into. So which country do you like is the question. So if you'd like to immigrate into some developed country, so maybe the easiest way is to immigrate into an English speaking nation like the United States of America and Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Great Britain. So from the regulations loaded to, or levied onto immigrants, maybe considering only the difficulties of learning foreign languages, English is the easiest for almost all the people around the world, because almost all the people have learned English language from the childhood. Maybe if you are a native speaker of English language, you have learned English language when, from when you are children, or from when you are kids. And if you live, maybe this is the case to almost all the country, which means English is the easiest language for you to study and acquire, or master. And apart from English language, the language the languages you can fairly study and master. The languages you can study and fairly master more easily than other languages are. For example, French language, and what else should I what else should I pick up except for English, French language, or anyway, I'm thinking of some European languages, and I have heard Spanish languages. Spanish language is fairly easy, and Portuguese, or I have heard German language is slightly difficult. It's slightly more difficult than English language or French language. For and German languages, comparing German language and French language, German language is more difficult for native speakers of English language, which is the information I have learned on the internet. So what I'd like to tell you is that in this case, maybe nobody chooses Japanese language. Nobody is going to choose Japanese language, which means no, which means you know, when, when thinking of which country to immigrate and which language to choose, Japan is Japan is really a difficult destination to immigrate into. So apart from the regulations of each developed countries, apart from the regulations of loaded onto immigrants in each developed country, you know, immigrants have to learn the local language, local language of the country those immigrants are going to immigrate into. So, considering which, you know, if if immigrants have if immigrants come to immigrate into my country, into Japan, those immigrants have to learn and acquire Japanese language, which is really difficult for most of the people all over the world. So, if you are European countries, I mean, any European country is fine. So, if you are for example, you may be a you may be an Estonian who uses Uralic language, or you, anyway, you might use a Slavic language or Slavonic language like Russian or any other. I don't know any other I don't know any other Slavic language. And if you maybe most people use Germanic language like German and some Nordic languages, and some cases, I don't know whether Polish is Slavonic language or not. So you might be a Pole, or you might be Polish. So if you live in any European country, so you may find, I think you find the Japanese language considerably difficult. So maybe only people who can acquire Japanese language fairly well are Chinese people and Korean people, because that is because in the case of Korean people, Korean language is really close to Japanese language. Also those two languages are really distant comparing with Spanish and Portuguese, for example. So basic words of Korean languages and Japanese language are really different, but we have some shared vocabularies, because once Empire Japan has maybe because once Empire Japan had conquered and colonized Korean Peninsula, maybe that is one of the reasons why South Korea and Japan has some shared vocabularies, having shared Chinese characters, having not shared Chinese characters, the same Chinese characters, meaning the same things. And maybe in in terms of the use of Chinese characters, mainland China has different manners of use of Chinese languages. Like though there are some Chinese characters, there are some differences in the meanings between my country and mainland China. But Chinese people can fairly acquire Japanese language well. So thinking about this, or based on this fact, so only people who can acquire Japanese language are Korean people and Chinese people or Taiwanese people in some cases. So in the case of Russian people, some Russian people can acquire Japanese language fairly well, because Japanese language and the Russian language are case languages. So, and what is case language is, in the case of English language is a language of grammar, and maybe German language has some case system. Like case is like, if you are a man, you are indicated by the word he, and when he comes to objective, he changes into him, and if he changes to possessives, he changes into his. So in the case of she, it's in the case of she, so the same rule is applied. So in the case of she changes into her when she comes to objective, and she changes to she doesn't change. She has the same possessive as objective. She, her. So that's it. Anyway, which means so whether linguistic world works or not is so linguistic world. If you live in a developed countries, and if you live in a developing country, and if you grow reluctant to immigrate into Japan because Japanese language is difficult, that means linguistic wall works. So, but still, this country has many immigrants. This country has many workers coming from other developing countries. So, based on this fact or considering this fact, so linguistic wall is not invincible, but comparing with English, I mean, so I think you can understand if you live in a developing country, because comparing between some English-speaking nation like United States of America or New Zealand, Australia or Great Britain, anything is fine with Japan, this country. So you can understand that it must be easier to immigrate into some English-speaking developed country than Japan, comparing only the local languages used in those developed countries. So in this case, only Japan uses Japanese language, and other English-speaking nations so use English as their local language anyway. So what I wanted to say is linguistic wall is not invincible. So this my country uses another really difficult language, different from some European languages, but 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 this country has a lot of foreigners, or a lot of people coming from other developing countries. But if this country uses if this country used English as a for example as an official language, or as a communicating language used by the general public in this country. So there must be more. There must be more. Not there must be. There would have been more immigrants, or there would be more immigrants in this country in this present time. So this country doesn't have so many immigrants comparing with other European developed countries. That can be because one of the reasons is because this, the language used in my country is really difficult, and more difficult than the language used in my country is more difficult than other European languages. So if you so this is a kind of advice to some European developed countries. And if European people want if European develop if European people living in developed sides of Europe want to create some linguistic wall like Japan has, so it's fine to replace usual or normal communicating language from English language to another language different from English language. So, which means what I'm telling you is that it's fine to replace the language used in the communication in EU or European nation from English to, for example, French, or from English to German, or from English to Dutch. Any other language is fine to use. So another, so comparing, so investigating the number of the native speakers of each European language. For example, if you create a ranking of languages used by each country, for example, so number one is Russian, number two is German, or number three is French, stuff like that. The picture of understanding is stuff like that. So if you create such ranking, if you create such ranking, so how so if you'd like if you not you'd like to, so if if EU wants to choose some language used to by a lot of people, it is fine to it is fine to choose, for example, German language or French language or Spanish language. And if 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 EU wants to, if EU wanted to, so if EU wanted to choose some language used by some minority people, or used to only by so few hundreds of thousands of people, like, this is just an image, so Lithuanian or Estonian or Finnish, so any other languages, or Luxembourgish, for example. These are just examples, and this is, of course, what I'm talking about is a hypothetical situation. So if EU if EU wanted to replace replace the communication language from English to another language, which is outright a hypothetical situation. So what I'm telling you is that those the replacements of, or the changes of communicating languages is an option. Is an option. That is just an option, which is what I'm telling you. And language. So if EU people want to, or if European people wants to create some linguistic wall, it's fine to change their communicating language from English to another language, because Great Britain Great Britain had left away from European Union, so which is fine. It's fine not to use English language. So anyway, so going back to the original topic. So whether the question whether linguistic wall works or not, well, does linguistic wall work. So original question is, does linguistic wall work, which is the original question. So the answer is yes, to some extent, but linguistic wall, or it is not invincible, which is the answer to the question of the title, or the, which is the answer to the question shown on the title. And this is what I'd like you to know this time. So that's it. So if the pandemic has if the pandemic has ended, or when the pandemic and if when the pandemic ends, so why don't you come to my country? So it's joking. It's joking. I don't know. I think few people want to come to my own country. So that's it. I'm sorry for my stumbling many times. So thank you very much for your listening. See you.